May 1946. A damp, fog-shrouded morning in the British countryside, near the rolling hills of Wiltshire. The air hangs heavy with the scent of wet earth and distant coal smoke, a chill that seeps through the thin wool blankets of the barracks. Inside one of the makeshift camps, rows of German prisoners of war stir from their uneasy sleep. The wooden huts creak under the weight of silence, broken only by the occasional drip of rainwater from the eaves and the muffled coughs of men who have endured years of captivity. These are not the battle-hardened soldiers of the front lines anymore. Their faces are gaunt, etched with the lines of defeat and the passage of time. One man, a former Wehrmacht sergeant named Hans, stares at the barred window, his breath fogging the glass. Outside, the English landscape stretches green and indifferent, a world away from the rubble-strewn streets of Berlin or the bombed-out factories of the Ruhr. Freedom is within reach. The war has ended, the papers say. Repatriation orders have arrived. Yet, as the guards announce the first transports home, a wave of terror ripples through the camp. Men who once charged into battle now plead to stay, their voices trembling not from the cold, but from something deeper, something unspoken. It is an ordinary morning in an ordinary camp, but beneath it lies an extraordinary dread, a homecoming that feels more like a sentence than salvation. This terror was no accident of fate. It was rooted in a hidden contradiction that few outside the camps could fathom. These POWs had survived the fury of Normandy beaches, the frozen hell of the Eastern Front, and the relentless Allied bombings. They had surrendered expecting mercy, perhaps even a chance to rebuild. But as the months turned to years in captivity, whispers spread like shadows in the night. Tales of what awaited them back in Germany. Soldiers who had dreamed of reuniting with families now fabricated illnesses, begged for asylum, or even attempted desperate escapes not toward home, but away from it. What could turn the promise of return into a nightmare? It was not just the devastation of their homeland, though that was grim enough. Cities reduced to skeletons of stone, millions displaced, famine stalking the land. No, the shocking truth lay in the deliberate deceptions and harsh realities orchestrated by the victors, a web of policies that made home a place of peril. Before we peel back the layers of this illusion, pause for a moment. What would you have felt, standing in that barracks, hearing the transport trucks rumble to life? Let me know in the comments below, because this fear gripped even the bravest among them, fooling minds hardened by war. And if stories like this pull you into the forgotten corners of history, don't forget to subscribe. There's another tale of wartime shadows waiting in the archives. To understand this moment, we must step back into the broader canvas of 1946, a year when the world was still reeling from the cataclysm of World War II. The conflict had claimed over 70 million lives, redrawn maps, and shattered empires. Germany, the aggressor nation, lay in ruins, divided among the Allied powers, the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. The Potsdam Conference of 1945 had set the stage for occupation, with the eastern zones under Soviet control and the West divided among the others. Repatriation of prisoners of war was a cornerstone of the peace process, enshrined in the Geneva Conventions and accelerated by the need to demobilize millions. By 1946, over 3 million German POWs were held by the Allies, many in camps across Europe and North America. The process seemed straightforward: screen for war crimes, provide basic aid, and send them home. But beneath this administrative facade lurked a profound human crisis. In the Soviet zones, Stalin's regime viewed returning POWs with suspicion, labeling many as traitors for having surrendered. In the West, denazification programs, mandatory questionnaires, and tribunals aimed to purge Nazi ideology, but they often ensnared ordinary soldiers in bureaucratic nightmares. Food shortages were rampant. The winter of 1946-47 would become known as the Hunger Winter, with caloric intakes dipping below survival levels. Yet, it was the psychological warfare, the deliberate spread of rumors and half-truths by Allied intelligence, that amplified the terror. These men were not just returning to a broken country. They were stepping into a deliberate illusion of justice and retribution, where perception was as weaponized as any bomb. At the heart of this deception were the minds of Allied planners, visionaries of a new world order, who understood that victory required not just military might, but mastery over the human psyche. Consider figures like General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander, who oversaw the occupation with a blend of pragmatism and moral resolve. Eisenhower's team, drawing from intelligence units like the OSS, precursor to the CIA, recognized that repatriation could destabilize the fragile peace if not managed carefully. They crafted policies that balanced humanitarian needs with security, but in doing so, they inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, sowed seeds of fear. In the East, Soviet commissars like Lavrentiy Beria, head of the NKVD, enforced a doctrine of collective guilt, viewing POWs as potential spies or collaborators tainted by Western captivity. Beria's network disseminated propaganda through camp loudspeakers and smuggled letters, painting returnees as enemies of the state destined for Siberian gulags. On the Western side, psychologists like Dr. Henry A. Murray, who had worked on OSS personality assessments, influenced Denazification by emphasizing the need to break the German spirit of militarism. These innovators saw repatriation not as an end, but as a tool for ideological transformation. They imagined a Germany rebuilt on democratic foundations, but to achieve it, they manipulated perceptions, leaking reports of mass trials, exaggerated famine stories, and whispers of forced labor. It was a genius of subtlety, convinced the POWs that home was a trap, and they might voluntarily aid in their own re-education, revealing secrets or renouncing old loyalties. The mechanism of this deception operated on multiple levels, blending physical realities with psychological sleight of hand. Physically, the POWs faced a gauntlet of screenings. The infamous Fragebogen, a 131-question form that probed every aspect of their lives for Nazi affiliations. A wrong answer could mean internment in special camps like Dachau, now repurposed for holding suspected war criminals. But the true genius lay in the perceptual warfare. Allied intelligence units, such as the British Political Warfare Executive, flooded camps with carefully curated newsreels and pamphlets. These depicted Soviet-occupied Germany as a land of purges, where returning soldiers were stripped of rank, separated from families, and shipped to mines in the Urals. One such pamphlet, circulated in 1946, described re-education centers that were little more than labor camps, complete with illustrations of emaciated figures toiling under guard. By night, in the dim glow of barracks lanterns, POWs shared smuggled letters from home, real or fabricated, detailing arrests and disappearances. The Soviets, meanwhile, employed double agents within the camps to spread tales of betrayal. Your comrades who returned last month vanished into the night. This created an illusion of inevitability, where the ordinary act of boarding a train home transformed into a descent into uncertainty. It was a deception built on light and shadow, the flickering lantern light symbolizing the false promise of safety, only to reveal the darkness of doubt. Historical evidence abounds in the archives grounding this narrative in cold fact. Declassified OSS reports from 1946 detail Operation Paperclip, which secretly recruited German scientists while leaving ordinary soldiers to face repatriation fears. One memo from the U.S. War Department notes that over 20,000 POWs petitioned for asylum in the West, citing credible threats of Soviet retribution. British intelligence files housed in the National Archives at Kew reveal intercepted letters where POWs wrote of their dread, "Better to die here than return to the red hell." Soviet records later released confirm the fate of many. The NKVD arrested thousands of returnees, with estimates from historian Anne Applebaum suggesting up to 1.5 million Germans endured forced labor in the Gulag system post-war. Eyewitness accounts, like those in the diary of POW Erich Hartmann, the famed Luftwaffe ace, describe camp discussions where men debated suicide over repatriation. These documents paint a picture not of random cruelty, but of systematic perception management. Allied and Soviet alike using information as a weapon to control the narrative of defeat. The emotional contrast was stark. A chasm between expectation and reality that tore at the soul. These men had entered captivity with a soldier's resignation, anticipating hardship but holding on to the hope of home, the warmth of a family hearth, the familiarity of village streets, the simple dignity of civilian life. Instead, they encountered a world where victory's justice felt like vengeance. A young infantryman from Bavaria might have imagined embracing his mother in a rebuilt Munich, only to learn through camp rumors that his home was in the Soviet zone, his family displaced, and he himself branded a collaborator for having been captured alive. Engineers who had built bridges under fire now faced tribunals questioning their every order, their skills twisted into evidence of complicity. Civilians back home, too, grappled with this. Wives writing letters pleading for their husbands to stay away, fearing association with traitors. This inversion fueled a profound despair. Courage on the battlefield gave way to vulnerability in peace, where the mind's illusions proved deadlier than bullets. This terror marked a profound ideological shift, where imagination triumphed over brute force in reshaping a nation. No longer was war won solely by tanks and troops. The Allies demonstrated that controlling perceptions could dismantle an ideology from within. Denazification, though flawed, forced Germans to confront their past, fostering a democratic ethos born from fear and reflection. In the East, Soviet tactics ensured loyalty through terror, but at the cost of human spirit. This single facet of repatriation, the engineered dread, altered tactics for future conflicts, influencing Cold War propaganda and modern psychological operations. It showed that deception, when wielded with precision, could rebuild societies, turning defeated soldiers into reluctant architects of a new order. Throughout this saga, the flickering lantern emerges as a potent symbol, a dim, unsteady light that promised guidance but often led astray. In the camps, it illuminated faces during midnight confessions, casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainties of home. It represented the illusion of safety in a world of deceptions, a beacon of endurance for those who clung to hope amid the lies. For many POWs, that soft glow became synonymous with survival, a reminder that even in darkness, the human spirit could discern truth from fabrication. The climax came in the summer of 1946, as repatriation transports accelerated. Tension built like a storm over the English Channel, guards herding men onto trucks, the engines rumbled, drowning out pleas. For Hans, our sergeant from the opening, the moment arrived on a rainy afternoon. He boarded a ship bound for Bremerhaven, his hands trembling not from the sea's sway, but from the stories that had haunted him. The proof unfolded in waves. Upon arrival, Western returnees faced denazification courts, where thousands were cleared, but many detained for months, their lives dissected. In the East, the horror was visceral. NKVD agents waiting at docks, sorting men like cattle. Archival records confirm the outcome. Of the 2 million returned to Soviet zones, hundreds of thousands vanished into labor camps, their fears validated in the clank of prison gates. One declassified report from the International Red Cross details escapes at border crossings, POWs fleeing back to the West, their illusions shattered by reality. The plan, Allied and Soviet, worked in its grim way, testing loyalties and purging threats, but at an immense human cost. Returning now to that foggy morning in Wiltshire, the scene takes on new meaning. What was once a simple camp, a place of waiting, reveals itself as a crucible of deception, a microcosm of the war's lingering shadows. The chill in the air was not just winter's bite, but the cold grip of uncertainty, where home became a myth unraveled by truth. In the end, these POWs' terror speaks to the enduring power of perception, a testament to how imagination can both destroy and rebuild. History isn't just written by those who fought, but by those who imagined the impossible, weaving deceptions that shape the world anew. If this story made you pause for a moment, give it a like. It helps more people find these forgotten chapters.